So, what is meant here by the delineate wretch whom with such infinite pains and care I had endeavored to form? The meaning is very simple, it's very clear. He is simply saying, or clearly saying, that he had pains and a lot of care in creating this wretch, and this is why all this monster, and this is why he was speaking of anxiety and agony here before. Okay, that is, it's not something that he wasn't anxious just like that. He wasn't anxious just because of the environment of the text. He was anxious because he had spent more than 2 years sleepless and living in pains because he wanted to make a beautiful creature. He had put all his energy and his time and his emotion in creating this creature, or in making this creature. So he goes on, his limbs were in proportion. What he means by his limbs were in proportion is that he had made everything perfect. Everything in his body was perfect. I had selected his features as beautiful. That is, he meant his creature to be beautiful. Yet, instead of being beautiful, he made the worst creature ever. So his yellow skin scarcely covered the work of muscles and arteries. That is, his muscles were greater or larger than his skin, which made him ugly. His hair was of a lustrous black. He decided to make his hair black, yet his hair and flowing. His teeth were of a pearly whiteness. He also decided to make he chose to make the teeth white. And this is why earlier I mentioned that all the organs were carefully chosen to make a good or a beautiful body. And that is what was actually what he actually did. But these luxuriances only formed a more horrid contrast with his watery eyes. Okay, these luxuriances only formed a more horrid contrast with his watery eyes. That is, all these beautiful things, the things that were meant to be beautiful, only made something ugly with his watery eyes. Watery eyes here is a reference to something that is disgusting. So here we know that among the other aspects of Gothicism that we have in the text, there is the aspect of the disgust. Okay, one of the important aspects of the text is the disgust, or of Gothicism is the disgust, which we see here in the watery eyes and which we see earlier in the lifeless body. Remember when I was asking you what is meant by the lifeless body? Yes, I meant disgust. The word that I wanted you to say was disgust and not death. Okay? More than being scary of a dead body, you are disgusted by a dead body. Okay? That seemed almost the same color as the dead white sockets in which they were set. His shriveled complexion and straight black lips. Now, that is, all these things have only made something disgusting and ugly. One more aspect that you can come up to or conclude from this text, that you can extract from this text, is the idea of the grotesque. What is the grotesque? The grotesque is an ugly body, okay, or an ugly creature. So one more aspect of Gothicism is the grotesque. Now, the grotesque is something that is ugly. The different accidents of life are not so changeable as the feelings of human nature. I had worked hard for nearly 2 years for the sole purpose of infusing life into an inanimate body. So now he is going back in the narration. In the beginning, he was narrating things directly. He was telling the things that he found in front of him, but then he started to go back in the narration and to tell things that happened before the creator woke up, which is in which he's breaking the linearity, the time linearity of the plot, and he is having a flashback. Okay, so I had worked hard for nearly 2 years for the sole purpose of infusing life into an inanimate body. For this, I had deprived myself of rest and health, and I had desired with an ardor with an ardor that far exceeded moderation. But now I had finished, the beauty of the dream vanished. Why did the beauty of the dream vanish? Because instead of creating a beautiful creature, he ended up making a monster. And breathless horror and disgust filled my heart. Okay? Breathless horror and disgust filled my heart. Now, we again have another analogy here, because he starts by speaking of the beauty of the dream, that is a dream that is beautiful. Okay? The beauty of the dream. On the other hand, the breathless horror and disgust filled my heart. So this here is another analogy. Okay, this is a figure of speech. This is an analogy. Next. No, not next. Before I move on to the next paragraph, I want you also to pay attention to the sentence that we have here. The fact that he says that he worked for 2 years, okay? And then he says, for the sole purpose of infusing life into the inanimate body, for this I had deprived myself of rest and health. So all these are related to his description in the beginning of the text, in which he says he was staying there or sitting there in anxiety and agony. That's because first he had lived in a lot of pains and care to create this monster, but also because he had worked for 2 years, because he had deprived himself of rest and health. So he is tired, he is anxious, he wants his creature to wake up as a human being, yet his experiment was entirely, his experiment failed, okay? It was an entire failure. Next paragraph. Unable to endure the aspect of the being I had created, I rushed out of the room and continued along a long time traversing my bed chamber, unable to compose my mind to sleep. At length, lassitude succeeded to the tumult I had before endured, and I threw myself on the bed in my clothes, endeavoring to seek a few moments of forgetfulness. By forgetfulness, he means to forget his bad creature, or his bad, his monster, the monster that he just made. But it was in vain. I slept indeed, but it was disturbed by the wildest dreams. Now, let's see the dream. I thought I saw Elizabeth. Now, Elizabeth is his wife. In the text, or in this excerpt, he wasn't married to Elizabeth, but he was in love with her. I thought I saw Elizabeth in the bloom of health. In the bloom of health, that is, she was very beautiful, she was very healthy. Walking in the streets of Inglewood, delighted and surprised, I embraced her. But as I imprinted the first kiss on her lips, they became livid with the hue of death. Her features appeared to change, and I thought I had held, that I held the corpse of my dead mother in my arms. A shroud involved her form, and I saw the grave worms crawling in the folds of the flannel. Okay, so he saw Elizabeth. He saw Elizabeth. She was very beautiful in the beginning, but then the moment he touched her, the moment he kissed her, she transformed from a beautiful creature to a dead body. She even looked like his dead mother, and then her body was covered with grave worms. Now, the grave worms are the worms that will eat human flesh and human bodies inside the grave, crawling in the folds of the flannel. The flannel was the tissue, or the it was the cloth of her outfit. Okay, so he slept, but he made a nightmare, and if you notice here that also the nightmare was full of disgust. So you see here other aspects of Gothicism, which are the disgust, horror, and fear. Okay, he had this, or rather, he made this nightmare because of fear. He made this nightmare because he was disgusted, because he was terrified by his creature, and he was in total fear. I started from my sleep, that he woke up from his sleep. Okay, I started from my sleep with horror. A cold dew covered my head. My teeth chattered, and every limb became convulsed. When, by the dim and yellow light of the moon, as it forced its way through the window shutters, I beheld the wretch, the miserable monster whom I had created. He held up the curtain of the bed, and his eyes, if eyes they may be called, were fixed on me. His jaws opened, and he muttered some inarticulate sounds, while a grin wrinkled his cheeks. Okay, so we know that the moment he woke up, he opened his eyes and he found the monster standing there and watching him. The monster was just looking at him without speaking. Again, he was disgusted by the monster and he didn't want to speak about the monster. He might have spoken, but I did not hear. One hand was stretched out seemingly to detain me, but I had escaped and rushed downstairs. I took refuge in the courtyard belonging to the house which I inhabited, where I remained during the rest of the night, walking up and down in the greatest agitation, listening attentively, catching and fearing each sound as if it were to announce the approach of the demoniacal corpse to which I had so miserably given life. So the entire paragraph is about how he rejected the beast. He didn't want to speak to the beast. He rejected the beast in all its forms, or in every form. And actually, this is why the beast was angry with him. And later, the beast was feeling lonely. The beast was trying to go over to approach human beings, but it was rejected all the time, particularly by his master or his creator, Victor. So he started hurting the people who surrounded Victor to show him that he wanted to be close to him. As he met with Victor, Victor told him that he had to stop hurting people. So the beast told him that if he did that, it's because he was rejected by Victor and that he had no one to go to, that he was feeling lonely. So he asked Victor to make another beast for him, a woman, in order to feel less lonely, to have someone to live with. Victor agreed and started to work on the second body, but then Victor realized that that would be the worst mistake ever, that he would be making a huge mistake if he would create another beast or another monster, that he would be creating a whole new breed, a whole new creature, and that these people can be breeding, they can give life to new creatures, and they become a new population. That it could have created a whole new race. So he was scared of all the consequences that might follow. So he stopped his experiment in the middle, and he decided that he was not going to give life to a second monster. When he took this decision, the beast decided to torture him, and he told him that he would kill his wife or rather, he told him that he will take his revenge and that he will go back to him on the day of his wedding. Indeed, the beast came back to Victor on the day of his wedding and killed Elizabeth on his wedding night. So he made his life even worse. He not only killed Elizabeth, he killed his brother, he killed his best friend, and he was watching a family in the forest from whom he has learned human behaviors, human language, and so on. So at the end of the novel, Victor was trying to catch the beast in order to kill him. They went to the Arctic, and that's where Victor died of pneumonia. Okay, now let's finish. Let me just go back to the last paragraph. No mortal could support the horror of that countenance. Now, the countenance means the appearance, the physical appearance. Okay, what is meant by countenance is physical appearance. A mummy, again endued with animation, could not be so. This here is be, not he. Could not be so hideous as the wretch. Okay, That is, a mummy with animation and animated, a vivid mummy would be more beautiful. So Heidi is like so ugly as the wretch. I had gazed on him while unfinished, and he was ugly then. But when those muscles and joints were rendered capable of motion, it became a thing such as even Dante wouldn't have conceived. Now, Dante is a medieval poet who used to speak about, who used to write about hell, about the afterlife, about life with the devil, and so on. I passed the night wretchedly. Sometimes my pulse beat so quickly and hardly that I felt the palpitation of every artery. At others, I nearly sank in the ground through the languor and extreme weakness. Mingled with this horror, I felt the bitterness of disappointment. Dreams that had been my food and pleasant rest for so long, for a longer space, were now sorry, were now become a hell to me. The change was so rapid, the overthrow so complete. Now, this is another analogy. See that the author uses a lot of analogies and paradox in her text, okay? This is one more analogy in which she's saying simply that what used to be his dreams, what used to be the most beautiful thing in his life, has become a hell, or has become a huge nightmare for him now. Okay? See, these dreams were not just ambitions for him, they were not just motivations. He says, dreams that had been my food and pleasant rest for so long. Okay, so these dreams were not any simple dreams. They have been his food. He replaced the dreams with food. He replaced food by the dreams. He replaced rest by these dreams. He even stopped sleeping for these dreams, because of these dreams. Okay, so dreams that had been my food and pleasant rest. This here is a metaphor. Okay, in which he means that these dreams were very important for him. They replaced food, they replaced rest. They were the most important thing for him. They were the most important thing in his life. Okay, so this is as far as the main ideas are concerned. Let us now speak about the audience and the themes. So the audience, or the targeted audience, is the 18th or the 19th century. Since this was the 19th century, it was the 19th century scientists, merely the people who are able to provide, to give to study science, or the people who were influenced by the Enlightenment. You know that Romanticism was a reaction against the Enlightenment. It was a reaction against the Age of Reason, and thus the main theme of the text and the novel here, or rather, it's a message to scientists and the people who were influenced by rationalism and by the Age of Reason. Okay. Now, the theme, we're going to stick to the themes of the text, even though the general themes of the novel are merely related to playing God, or to, someone who would try to take or the idea that it is bad to try to take the place of God or to play God. Okay, the basic themes. Let me write this here. Basic themes of the novel. They are merely related to the idea of playing God, or taking the role of God, which is a bad thing. Okay, Mary Shelley is aware that if anyone would try to play God, or to think that they can be as strong as God, anyone who think that they can be as they can do God's work, are going to have bad consequences, which is what happened to Victor. Okay, one more theme is the theme of anxiety. Now, anxiety is an important aspect in Gothic literature and for the Romantics in general. This is why it is a theme here. So anxiety is depicted in Victor's character and psychology. Okay. Now, Victor is constantly anxious about his creation and about his experiment, not only because he hoped for something to be successful, but also because he had the very opposite of what he expected to create. Okay, the result of his experiment was truly bad. It was very negative, which is why he decided to, which is why he lived in constant agony and in anxiety. One more theme is the theme of darkness, of the horror, of the disgust. Okay, so everything that we mentioned here as the aspects of Gothicism are also basic themes here in this text. But the most important themes that we can speak about are merely those of trying to play God, but man cannot play God, man cannot take the role of God, and the theme of anxiety, that is, in writing a Gothic text or in trying, all the Gothic texts in general, or the Gothic environment would be characterized by anxiety and by agony. Now, I don't know if there are any other themes. Yes, the theme of disgust, as I said, darkness, they are also themes, okay? And of course, if you are speaking about these in an exam, you have to provide your arguments, you have to explain how they are shown in the text, and you have to provide the arguments. So other themes here are darkness, agony, fear, horror, and in that point of view, the point of view of the text is first person, central. Okay, it is first person because all the events happen to the speaker himself, which is Victor, and it is central because Victor is the protagonist. Okay, so the point of view in the text is first person central. The point of view is first person central because the speaker or the narrator is the protagonist. And all the events happened directly to him. So he is not reporting events. He is telling things that truly happened to him directly. Okay? Now,
Yes.
to speak about the characterization.
Yes.
Yes? Yes?
Limited or omniscient. Limited or omniscient.
It cannot be limited or omniscient in the first person. It is limited or omniscient in the third person. Okay? In the first person, it is peripheral or central. In this case, it is central. Now, let's move on to characterization. In the characterization, there is the protagonist, who is Victor Frankenstein. Now, I have mentioned many things about Victor before I started the text. We said he is compared to Prometheus. Sorry. He is compared to Prometheus because they both lived in total agony for humanity, for human beings, sorry. In the text, he is depicted as anxious. He is tired. We see that he says that these dreams have become his food, that he wasn't sleeping at all, and so on. So he is tired and he is anxious. All right. Now let's speak about his role in the text. He is the protagonist, as mentioned earlier. So he is the main character. Sorry, he is the main character, the protagonist. and he is a round character. Why is he a round character? He is just like a real life person. Okay? He is very lifelike. He is multidimensional, and we see we see his emotions. He was anxious. He was speaking about his dreams, and then after the creator woke up, he was entirely devastated, and he was deceived. Okay, so all these make him into a round character. So the round character is a character that shows human emotions and that shows different dimensions of their personality. They are very similar to the real life. They also evolve and change throughout the narrative. So the second character, the second character in the text is the beast. Now, the beast is not truly active in this text. So the activity of the beast in this text is rather limited. Okay, so he is described. He is described He's described as ugly and hideous. Okay. Now we cannot truly think of him as an antagonist because he didn't hurt. He didn't hurt Victor in this text, although he scared him. But for most of the part, or most of the time in the narrative, the beast is considered as an antagonist. Okay, so he is a main character. He is an important character. Often comes as the antagonist. Now, I wouldn't say he is the antagonist. I say he often comes as the antagonist, but I do not refer to him as a total antagonist because I quote here one of my earlier students. He never chose to be made. He never chose to be created ugly. He never chose to be created as a monster. So he was partly victim rather than entirely an antagonist. Okay, yet there are times in the text in which he is an antagonist. In this text, he can be considered as an antagonist because he scared Victor. He scared the protagonist, although the protagonist was the man who made it. Whether he is a flat or a round character, I would think of him as a flat character because he is not lifelike. Yet he imitates the human beings and he lives just like a real human being, which makes him actually a round character, especially if you would look at him in other parts of the text, in other parts of the novel, in which he is expressing his wish to have someone to be by his side, his wish to revenge. He also says that he has feelings, that he feels rejected all the time, and it hurts him, so he feels hurt. He has the feelings of a real human being, and he is just like a real human being, except for his appearance, which is beastly. Okay, so for this reason, even though he is a fictional character, but in this case, he is a round character too. Okay, now let's move on to the plot development. Now, the plot begins, or
Yes.
there are different conflicts in the beginning. Yes?
The beast, is it round character or flat character in this story?
Next, do you see my, Askin, do you see my screen?
No,
You don't see my screen? You don't see the text?
no, I don't.
You see nothing? Hello?
I don't see nothing.
Okay, how about the others? Do you see my screen?
Yes, me.
Yes.
We do,
Yes.
but sometimes the connection gone wrong. So
Okay. Well, everything is written in the, sorry. I've been typing things on the screen from the beginning, and well, anyway, he's a round character. Okay, I had just the reason why I told you to look at the screen is because I had just written round character when you asked me whether he is a round or a flat character, and I had just finished explaining why he was a round character. I said he is a round character because he is very like a human being. Okay, he's very similar to a real human being. Even though he is fictional, he is very similar to a real human being. He has the feelings of a human being, the emotions of a human being, the thoughts of a human being. He wants revenge just like a human being. He wants someone in his life to be less lonely, just like a human being. He feels lonely, again, just like a human being, which makes him a round character. Okay? Now, the plot development. The plot begins, sorry, the plot or the first conflict begins when Victor feels anxious in a dreary night. Okay? No, not truly. This is not where the plot actually begins. Remember, earlier I said that he uses, or rather, the author breaks the plot linearity. And that's because we may think that this is the beginning of the plot, but this is not the true beginning of the plot. This is the beginning of the text. The plot actually begins here when he says, I had worked hard for nearly 2 years. Okay? So there is a time. Sorry, the author is breaking the time linearity in this plot. That is, things are not told chronologically. But in order to speak about this plot, we have to go back to the first event that started all the problems. So everything started 2 years earlier. So this is the first conflict in the plot. Okay, so the plot begins 2 years before the creature woke up. Victor mentions that he had deprived himself of sleep and food because he wanted this experiment to be successful. Okay? It develops more anxious about it, and reaches the climax. No, it is more, yeah, and reaches the climax when the creature wakes up and Victor realizes that the experiment was a total failure because the creator was ugly and beastly. Okay, the moment he realizes that the creature is not a real human being, it's not a beautiful human being as he expected, but in fact the creator was a beast, that it was ugly and so on. That is the climax. It's the most important or the most dangerous, I wouldn't say dangerous, but the most complicated point in the narrative. There is no true or no real denouement in this plot or in this excerpt, but we can think of the plot as resolving very slightly the moment he falls asleep and he is away from the beast. Okay, so the plot slightly, and I say slightly on purpose because this is not the end of the plot. Okay, in this excerpt we have taken just part of the plot, but we do not have a full plot here. Okay, so if you are asked to provide a plot, you have to think about the conflict, the development of the conflict into a climax, and then how it resolves. If there is no resolution, it simply means that the resolution is in another part of the text. You can either explain it on your own or leave it. You are not required to speak of the resolution if it's not in the text. Okay, in this case it slightly resolves when Victor falls asleep and feels, no, it's not when he falls asleep, but when Victor walks away from the beast. When Victor walks away from the beast and feels safe from it. Okay, the moment Victor is away from the beast, the moment Victor is no longer next to the beast, and he feels safe from the beast. He feels safe from the dangers and from the ugliness of the beast. Okay, so the settings were discussed before in the beginning of the text. We said the settings: a dreary night of November, right? In Victor's room. Now, what do we mean, or what is the significance of the settings? The settings are made purposefully gothic and terrifying to fit with the general atmosphere of the text. Okay? Now, let's speak about the language devices. Okay? In the language devices, there is the register. Sorry. Register is informal. Register is informal. He uses everyday language. The diction is a composition of both Latin origin and Anglo-Saxon origin words. Now, figures of speech. We have mentioned many figures of speech earlier during the analysis, but there are even more. So there is an analogy here. There is a metaphor here when he says, dreams that have been my food and pleasant rest for so long. There is another analogy at the end. There is also, let's have a look at the other figures of speech that are in the text. I beheld my accomplishments of the toys. Yeah, there is a simile here. It seemed almost as the same color as the then white socket. So this is a comparison of the yellow eyes, or of the disgusting color of the eye, to the disgusting color of the sockets in which they arrived. Okay, so this here is a simile. Here, there is also, no, this is not a figure of speech, but now I finished. The beauty of the dream vanished. The beauty of the dream vanished. Now, the beauty of the dream vanished, and breath is horrid and disgust filled my heart. This entire sentence is an analogy. But if we would take just the beauty of the dream vanished alone, this here is a personification. Okay? This is a personification. There is also another personification when he says, breathless horror and disgust filled my heart. Okay, so this too is a personification. Now, the beauty of the dream vanished is a personification, which means that the dream ended, that all his hopes were over, that there was no more hope for something beautiful to happen. While breathless horror and disgust filled my heart is a personification also because his heart was full of sadness, that his heart was full, which means that his heart was full of sadness and pains and so on. Now let's have a look, let's see if there are any other figures of speech here. I threw myself on the bed in my clothes, endeavoring to seek a few moments of forgetfulness. Yes, disturbed by the wildest dreams is also a personification, which means that he had difficulties in sleeping because of his nightmares. Okay, this is a personification, which means that he had trouble or he had difficulties in sleeping because of the nightmares. I thought I saw Elizabeth in the bloom of health. In the bloom of health is also is a metaphor, which means beautiful. Okay, in the bloom of health is a metaphor which means beautiful. In the bloom of health could also be considered as a hyperbole because it's an exaggeration. Walking in the streets of English, delighted and surprised and embraced her as imprinted the first kiss on her lips. They became so livid with the hue of death. With the hue of death is also a personification. It's a metaphor which means that she was almost death, or that her features started to look like those of a dead body. Okay, this here is a metaphor. Her features appeared to change, and thoughts I held the dead corpse of my mother in my arms. A shroud enveloped her form. I saw grey worms crawling in the fold of the flannel. I started to sleep. I started from my sleep with horror echo. Okay, I will stop here with the figures of speech. I should move on to the other aspects of the analysis. Now, the other aspects of the analysis are the tone. In the tone, you can feel the voice of the author. Now, the voice of the author can be understood or can be grasped from the choice of the words from the events that happen in the text. So the tone in this particular text can be that of anger. You can feel like the author is angry with Victor because of his bad experiment and because of his irresponsibility. Okay, you can also feel deceit and anxiety. All right, these are at least the words that or the feelings that I felt in the tone of the author. The author felt anxious about the turn of events, about what happened to Victor himself. There was deceit in the experiment and the results of the experiment, and anger with Victor himself. Okay, the atmosphere. In the atmosphere, the atmosphere is about the environment. We had mentioned that earlier. So the atmosphere is all about darkness, horror, terror, deceit, disgust. Okay, all these things or all these feelings are accurate when you are speaking about the atmosphere. But also remember, or rather always remember, when you are speaking about the atmosphere, you have to explain. There is darkness because in the beginning, the night is described as dark. Everything around him is dark. Even the candlelight is about to be turned off, and even the feelings that are taking over him, his anxiety, his agony, everything leads to darkness. There is horror when he sees, when Victor sees the result of his experiment, and he sees that it was a failure, that he had just made a beast, which also leads to terror. He was deceived from the experiment because he had expected something better. That is, most of his deceit is merely due to the fact that he was expected something positive rather than something negative, more than the fact that he had just made a beast that can be deadly or dangerous. At this moment, he doesn't know that his beast is dangerous. He is rejecting it just because he feels deceived, just because of his deceit, nothing else. And there is disgust in the atmosphere because everything around him is disgusting. There are dead body organs. There are hundreds of things that are deceiving and disgusting. Even the dream and his nightmare was disgusting. Okay, now this is all for the analysis. I hope that you enjoyed my one-sided analysis, which did not include any of your opinions, but I'm sorry you were very slow in the beginning, and we had to finish this in due time. Okay, this was all for today's analysis.
Next time I will make a very short session for a revision. The session of the revision is not going to take more than 30 minutes. So hopefully you are going to get ready for it.